What's up, gang? Welcome to Room and Board. My name's Chris George, and today we have, you guessed it, another episode of Crowdfunding Countdown, where I take a look at all the board game campaigns leaving Kickstarter this upcoming week. The reason being, if you haven't tuned in before, I am a generous man and want every game to get their time in the sun. And also, there are too many games to keep track of nowadays. It's easy to forget when you have to cancel your pledges for the early bird. You don't really know the value of the stretch goals until near the end of the campaign. And this gives us a bar not based on marketing budget, but based on time remaining. I like covering everything because you can find some hidden gems out there that really don't get the recognition they deserve for whatever reason. And you can also find some pretty big duds out there, which I appreciate you staying with me to get me through those hard times. As always, I'll read through all the rulebooks so you don't have to, and I'll try to highlight any interesting mechanics or interesting things that I think about these particular games that are finishing up this week, telling exactly one joke along the way. And there's not going to be a laugh track, so you're going to have to listen carefully. But before we get into it today, I had the BSG giveaway result announced last week, and much to my chagrin, Brews and Board Games comment got picked as the winner. Now, since I like all of you so much more than I like that guy, I gave you a chance that we'd do a redrawing if you got to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the week. What's the tally? You let all of us down. I don't want to give it to him. In fact, I hate his stinking guts. I'm just kidding. He's an awesome dude, and we've chatted and connected a couple of times over email and Skype. So I'm giving you all one more week to get him to 1,000 subscribers so that I can feel good about redrawing and picking one of you who I like so much more instead. So if you're feeling generous, go on over to Brews and Board Games and give them a subscribe. And who knows, it may result in you winning Battlestar Galactica yourself. But onto the games. We actually don't have a lot of larger titles this week. There's hardly any that I had heard of before actually looking into this. So this is your week to support smaller publishers and help get their projects off the ground. Usually I tend to harp on price a lot, and I'm going to try to do that less this week since the nature of these smaller publishers means it's going to be a little bit more expensive than you would see in a larger scale because they don't have that ability to produce more and thereby reduce the cost, which other games do when they're having a wider retail release. So it's worth noting going into it that probably these prices, at least to a cheap person like me, are going to feel a little bit on the pricey side, but that's what you get when you're supporting smaller publishers who won't get that wide retail release. Most of them won't anyway. I'll try not to harp on it too much, but there are also some in there that are outrageous. So first up we have Eero, which is an abstract strategy game along the same lines of chess and checkers if each piece and the board decided to go on a gigantic acid trip and rub some Chinese checkers all over them to boot in their haze. The goal of the game is to move one of your pieces to your opponent's home row, which is the furthest side of the board that's opposite your starting end. It's the end of the board. Get a piece to the end of the board. God. The catch being every piece can move 1 to 3 spaces orthogonally and diagonally, but they can only move through the color combination on the top of their piece. I also love that at the beginning of the game, each side arranges their 6 different tiles in whatever combination they want, in addition to arranging their pieces however they want, keeping 4 of them in reserve that you can swap in later. This might as well be Analysis Paralysis the musical. This is more complicated to my brain than 4D chess. And yes, I mean 4D. I cannot even comprehend how I would start to be able to make a decision in this game, being prone to analysis paralysis, until I would inevitably realize that there are too many combinations and I would just set it up and have a good time, doing the best that I could. And honestly, it seems great. This is a game of checkers that could actually be interesting and fun. It's a nice, unique twist, seems super easy for people to learn how to play, and yet has that hard to master quality. And this is also one of the most genuine and calming Kickstarter videos that I have ever seen. You can tell it's a passion project, and that's the sort of thing that I like to see. It's $33 Canadian, and it comes in this £1 box, so shipping should probably not increase from their 10 to 16 Australian dollar estimate that they have on the campaign. So if you're interested, you have a little bit less than 48 hours, and that is Wednesday at 2:30 a.m. Atlantic time, aka Tuesday night. And it's also on Tabletopia if you want to try it out beforehand. Now, next up we have Carrots, and I love this game's backstory. And it's emphasized in the video that once upon a time, there were a bunch of buddies living around, and then this giant meteor came crashing down. Presumably that little Peter Cottontail did not make it out. And it starts oozing all these colors out into the land. And so you're probably thinking, oh, this is going to be some sort of mystical game, right? Where they have to recreate the land, or it's a map with different areas and they all do different things. No. The only reason for this backstory to exist is to justify that the rabbits have different colored fur. The animation cost it must have taken, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. It is a fictional world where bunnies have jobs. They don't have to be poisoned by a meteor for their fur to change. Nobody was questioning why these bunnies had green or purple fur. We weren't questioning that one of them is an insurance broker either. Oh, it just makes me laugh. It is literally the only reason for this meteor backstory to happen, and then they just get on with the rest of the game, which is you're trying to get the most carrots, and that's about it. It's basically a push your luck betting game. You can put carrots in a bank and get some interest on them, or you can buy a farm and grow more carrots that way. But it seems like the crux of the game is going to take place on this betting table where you can bet your hard-earned carrots for more carrots. Try to get the most carrots before the game's over. The game's over when all the carrots are gone or all the cards are gone. Basically, if you want to think of it, it's like bunny craps with special powers. Craps, the dice game. So don't be wandering into a field trying to scoop up random droppings and hoping to get these special powers for yourself. Remember, you need to sacrifice good old Watership Down for that to happen. And honestly, I am not even thinking about the game. I can't stop thinking about the theme, which maybe is the right thing. And maybe that's the reason, and it's doing its job. Oh, I love it so much because it is so pointless. What's cool about this is it will be sold at retail in one store in Orlando, Florida. So if you live in Orlando, Florida or near it and want to get it, you can get local pickup, which I always love for Kickstarters. One of the main reasons I backed Vigilante all those many moons ago. Now the Kickstarter right now is around $25 US, which is about the same as Euro. And if you wait to get it at retail in that specific Florida store, Orlando, Florida, they're going to ask $40 for it, which I said I wouldn't comment, but it's just a bunch of cards. So if you want it, now is the time to do so, and you have until Wednesday at 8:59 a.m. to get it. Now next up we have a game which I think is really neat in theory, but just stumbles significantly in the execution. I just don't think it looks that fun. But it is definitely something Brews and Board Games should cover, or they should give them some promo packs for it, because it is the combination of those two interests, and that is Battle of the Breweries, a brewery trading card game where you compete to make the best brew and get the best mascot for your brew, and once someone has brewed 3 beers, the game's over, and who's ever brewed them the best is the master brewer. And the theme and execution is really neat because they've partnered with all these different breweries and have their specific beers and little stats about their beers and on the cards. And that seems neat. It seems like a really neat gimmick. And they've either implemented these breweries into the main game, which is £24 or 43 bucks Canadian, or into these sort of booster packs, which don't even get me started. And each brewery will put different beers into the deck that you can then draw and try to create. It sounds cool. It sounds like an interesting thing to be able to offer these trading card packs to those specific breweries if you're on a brewery tour, and you could pick them up and have a little souvenir from this brewery that you visited with the stats. That also seems interesting. But there are a couple of turnoffs. An immediate turnoff, and yes, we're going to talk about stupid pricing, is their outlandish claim that you're getting £90 worth of value in this base game, which is 154 cards. That's $160 Canadian. That's 4.5 Rallyman cars. And no, you're not. just because trading card packs are expensive nowadays. And nowhere in existence that I know of does a little booster pack cost you $10 to begin with. That's not what people will pay. It doesn't mean you can attribute whatever price you want on it and claim that your backers are getting that value. Oh yeah, well, I'm not going to sell this one card except at one spot for $200,000. So in your base pledge, you're getting $200,000 value. That's not how it works. Well, maybe it is how it works, but nobody's going to believe you. Get with the damn picture. But maybe that could be forgiven. I mean, I couldn't forgive it, but maybe you could forgive it if the gameplay was significantly interesting, and unfortunately it looks also unimaginative. You're just going to be drawing random cards, hoping you get the cards to match up with your initial hand of beers and alcohol ranges so that you can lay them on the table and get points at the end. Or you can battle people to steal their cards, and you use your beers to battle, which is kind of fun, but it's just who's got the bigger card? I do. I get your beer. And it's such a shame because this is such a unique concept, and reading about it and reading about the execution, I was like, yeah, this could be really cool. And I just don't think it is. But if you're interested, maybe you could tell me any little modicum of strategy that I may have missed or any draw. The deadline for that is also Wednesday at 2:08 p.m. We're moving on to another game that probably nobody should get. There are 12 backers currently, and yet it has hit its funding goal, which was about $1,000. And maybe because it's $90 for the base pledge, which is a 15-minute game that's made out of wood. And there are some other pieces and a glow-in-the-dark dice. And they also say it's a game, so it must be a game? This is their intro video, portions of it. We got the earth and some wood and some dancing in front of a balloon and some wood. But hey, if that doesn't convince you, how about I give you some quotes from the campaign page? Our board game is a simple and fun experience that you will want to devote all your free time to. That sounds promising. You can compare it to a song you heard somewhere, but you can't help but hum it. That's poetic. I actually like that. But I like this one more. A game so fun, you won't want to go to bed. Now, if you're backing, remember these 3 secrets on the campaign page. Secret number 1, the secret is not to give in to fatigue and to play actively. You can play the game even if you're dealing with age complications. Secret 2, remember, we're stronger together. Secret 3, don't think and play only in a good mood. In the end, because the result depends only on how the dice fall and the disc turns. No, that's the end of the sentence as well. And that's the crux of the game. All of this stuff, but in the end, only play when you're in a good mood because it only depends on how the dice roll. That's how the game's gonna be. You just roll the dice and everything else, it doesn't matter. I still don't know what the game's about. I think you spin the disc and you throw your little man on it and you get that coin, and then you stack that coin on a bunch of other coins. Where's the dexterity? Because you have to time the disc, and they've got this shot of them knocking over the men, which I think is just for fun. And then when all the discs are gone, who gets what stack? Is it whoever put the last one on a specific stack? And then there's just one where the guy just takes all the money, and I don't know how he did it. I'm so confused. And I will remain so, because we're moving on to the next one. Thank you for keeping me company. Now, next up we have a game called The Split, which for £15 or 27 Canadian dollars, you can play blackjack, but with cheating. And you're all competing on how to split up the loot that your gang has assembled, and then also make it out of your hideout in a disguise, presumably because the police have your hideout surrounded, but they won't recognize you or check your papers if you walk out wearing a fake mustache. That's how I like to think of it anyway. And this game actually seems better than I first anticipated. I was really ready to rage upon it for it just being a stack of cards, a regular card deck. But you also get this deck full of loot, and you also get this deck full of like little cheaty cards. And I like that at the beginning of each round you create a number of loot piles -1 for the number of players. So if it was 4 players, there'd be 3 loot piles. And you see one of the cards, but you don't see the other card, and if nobody takes that pile, another mystery card gets added to it. So it seems like this fun push your luck game that is based on blackjack, with some little cheating cards. And I assume you'd want to save those cheating cards until you see that big loot pile that you want to take. And you'd have to time it out when to use these bonuses or not. If you're interested, I didn't see a rulebook, but the 6-minute video, which the B-roll is all coming from, is pretty great at explaining all the ins and outs of the games, and you can see if it's right for you. And you have until Thursday at 9 a.m. to decide. Now next up we have Siege Command. Welcome to the Hinterlands. Oh, okay, weird title, but I'll go with it. If I know anything about the Hinterland, it's that the northern tundra is home to one of the most beautiful members of the owl family, the snowy owl. The female is not as brilliant white as the male. Oh, I see what happened here. That's Kinterlands. What a bad joke. Do you remember those commercials? The Hinterlands Who's Who? If you don't, it was certainly a deep pull on that one. But anyway, Siege Command describes itself as a 2-player lane-based strategy game of simultaneous planning and turn-based strategy. I think most games you plan simultaneously. I guess you have to commit to what you're doing first. That's what they mean. You're going to battle over control for these 4 turrets in these 4 lanes and try to smash the other opponent's wall or fortress or whatever's on the other side of that to bits. You'll each have a health counter, and you're going to send your troops down these lanes and hope that they can get to the other side or get to these turrets, which will knock out your opponents, blowing them up to smithereens. They also don't have a rulebook available, or not one that I saw, but it's pretty easy to get a sense of what's going on, if not how it plays. It seems like it's going to be whoever throws the most troops at the other person the most effectively will win. And you've got spells that you can also be casting, as well as your infantry troops moving forward. Which kind of reminds me how the Snowy Owl's major food source is the lemming. And the availability of the lemming has a major effect. Okay, I'm sorry. We're moving on. That's Thursday at 3:33 p.m. Now next up we have Carnage, which really doesn't look like it's going to fund. It's pretty far off. It was at around 38% last time I checked. And honestly, it's probably because it's 80 bucks Canadian and it has standees instead of miniatures. People love miniatures. Throw them in. You'll probably get funded. They wanted to unlock the miniatures add-on box at 50K. It's just, that's never going to happen. So I'm just going to do a quick overview on this one in case you want to pledge for the relaunch down the road, if they have a relaunch. It's very much like Betrayal at House on the Hill, except everybody has their own personal goal, and you have to get the power on back in this house that you're trapped in and escape without dying due to the poison gas in the air or the various traps in all of the rooms. Now, players can die, and if they do die, that's when they become the deranged, which can be a creepy clown, a scary chainsaw guy, all your standard horror types. And I mean, really, one of the main reasons why I wanted to highlight this campaign is that I think that these deranged would make prime candidates for the next little character to make a cameo on this.
Are you trying to replace me?
I could never replace you, Maggie. It's just, sometimes it's nice to shake things up a bit, you know?
Oh, honey, I'm glad you feel that way. I met the most wonderful man.
Hey, how's it going there, wise guy?
Hey there,
I've never felt more betrayed and scared for my life at the same time.
Yes, we've gotten along so well
What are you doing looking down there? You look at me. You look at me when I'm around you.
This was a mistake. I'll sort through these feelings later. Anyway, back to Carnage. If this seems like your jam, or if you want to back something so you have the feeling that you backed something this week and not actually have to spend the money, your deadline for that is Friday at 12:59 a.m., aka Thursday night.
Anybody want any bacon?
It's a work in progress. Now next up, if you want to spend an obscene amount of money on some wood, even more money than Money Twist, you can back the Hexagonal gaming system by Wyrmwood. These are the most premium coasters you can get. The most premium card holders ever. The most premium trays that can hold your 7 meeples quite comfortably if you're playing one of those games that only requires you to have 7 meeples. Now the price ranges from $25 to $105 for one single coaster. And I get that these are some quality woods.
Quality wood?
Okay, no. Shut it down. Never again. But do you really need them? No. In no world do you need these. But are they really pretty? Yes. But I don't even believe that they're going to be great for space saving or even usability. The card holders can hold like 4 cards. I mean, they just seem so pointless to me. Incredibly well made and well crafted, but incredibly pointless. But then again, I'm also a no-frills type of guy. This is so far out of my price range that it's not even a consideration for me. And even still, damn, it's a good video. And it gets me excited about this thing before I realize that I never wanted this thing to begin with. But hey, if you're a millionaire, well then check it out. That finishes Friday at 1 a.m., aka Thursday night again. I will say that unlike a lot of these products' Kickstarter pages, the price calculator is really accessible and easy to look through, so you can see what you're getting, and I think that is fantastic. Too many of these accessory Kickstarter campaigns are so overly complicated with all the different itemized pledges you can get, and it's so confusing what you actually get in each one, and you have to scroll through mounds and mounds of campaign pages to cross-reference anything. I absolutely love this calculator, and I think it's an awesome job, and they should 100% be commended for making it accessible and easy to glance at to see what you want to get and how much it'll cost you. Now our next one, if you ever thought, gee, I want to play a game that's not about the Lion King, but is about filming the Lion King, well, you're in luck, because we've got Wild Serengeti, or Wild Serengeti, or Genti, whatever the typo was when they accidentally launched it too early. I'm always watching. And in this, you're competing to film the best nature documentary. The Lion King was an actual documentary, right? I'm pretty sure it was a documentary. You're gonna get to put these little animeeples out on the board and try to capture their scenes of them all walking in a line to the watering hole, or hanging out on the rocks, sipping margaritas, as the lions and the flamingos often do. I don't think there are flamingos in this game, but there are a lot of animals. It's $52 US, 66 Canadian, and it says that you're getting $8 off, but you also get this additional promo pack, which has like a little hippo in it for your troubles of paying for the shipping. So if that's worth it to you, or you want to wait till retail, you'll have to decide for yourself. This one looks incredibly charming, and that's really just based off of the animeeples on their own. It's cute, people are going to connect with the theme, and it also seems like it'll be really easy to pick up. I've been impressed with Bad Comic Games. I remember their first Kickstarter, Shaolia, I think that's how you say it, which I didn't get, but I almost pulled the trigger on. It was one of those that I was so close to pulling the trigger on, and I didn't just because it was a little bit out of my price range at that time. But the quality is really good here, and the rulebook is very easy to read. Blink and you'll miss it on the campaign page, but it is there. There's not much you do on your turn. You basically place your little marker down somewhere of the 8 spots, and you pay the coin cost associated with filming that portion of the documentary, or whatever it is. You'll be discovering an animal in the wild and taking a meeple and putting it on the map, or you can get more scenes, more storyboards, I guess, to try to set up for your film, or you can move the animals around on the board to make sure they're set up for that perfect shot. And you keep moving your little token around until everybody passes. But you can't pass if you have 4 coins or more, because all the actions cost you money, or most of them do. So that ensures that one person can't just sit back raking in their investors' funding and then shoot it all in one go. Because think of the film crew. Give them some time to process and edit the footage. And it's also called Wild Serengeti, so you can be sure that there's going to be more animeeples and more maps and more expansions down the line. That's my bet. I mean, you can't be sure, but that's what I'm betting. Anyway, the deadline is Friday at 9:07 a.m. if you're interested. Now next up we have a card game called 10 out of 10, which at first glance really got me hoping that I could pull out my funny card air horn. But on second glance, you actually realize that it's pretty decent. It's just like someone mashed Just One and Wavelength together. And since Wavelength is fantastic and Just One is, yeah, it's pretty okay, I imagine that this one will be pretty fun. What happens is one person will have a number that they're going to have to guess, which everyone else sees and they don't see. And that person will have a number of scenarios, and they give those out to the people around the table. And then each person around the table is going to give them a clue based on that scenario. So it might be like, the best superhero. And then they try to give somebody a clue to get them to guess that number. So maybe Superman is a 10 out of 10 and Toenail Clipping Boy is a 1. Although I love that comic. And everybody gives their clues, and then the person has to guess. And if you guess the right number, you score a point collectively. And you probably play to a number of points, but let's be real, you're going to play until you want to move on to another game. I honestly think Wavelength is better. I think that the plethora of clues that you're going to get from people around the table probably going to make this a little bit easier, but I might be wrong. And in Wavelength, you can also have those 0.5 numbers where this is really just 1 to 10. And in Wavelength, you can pit two teams against each other. But I guess you could also do a sort of two-team variant of this if you wanted. I'll be expecting my royalty check in the mail, designers. It's 38 bucks Canadian or 30 US if you want it, and I believe it is free shipping to the US. I'm not sure because they don't say. They say specifically that the expansion will be shipped to you for free if you're in the US, but I didn't find anything about the game. So if you're interested, you may want to look into that a little bit further so you don't get hit with a shipping bill when you weren't expecting one. Like I said, I'd still probably opt for Wavelength, but this is a pretty good premise, and I am pleasantly surprised by it. And definitely worthwhile checking out if you like that sort of thing. The deadline for that one being Saturday at 1:59 a.m., aka Friday night. Now next up we have a 2 versus 2 game called Dragon and Rider, where one person plays the dragon and one person plays the rider. And even though you've been riding your dragon for quite some time, you still haven't learned how to speak dragon yet. So you have to sense out each other's movements as you battle this other team of a dragon and a rider. And you don't see many 2 versus 2 games, or at least I don't, which is nice, and it makes it unique and might be something you want to gravitate towards if that is your general group feeling. They say it's based off of The Prisoner's Dilemma, which I don't really quite see, because in The Prisoner's Dilemma, that's about two people having a choice to do something that either serves themselves and hurts the other person, or hurts themselves hoping the other person will also hurt themselves, and you get a less punishment or a less penalty. But I kind of get what they're going for in the sense that these two people have to make a choice to do something, and they cannot communicate with their other person. So the team who's going to win is the team that can create that psychic connection between them better than the other team. Because the dragon's going to play a card, and then the rider plays a card, and the rider plays a card, and the dragon plays a card. And then you flip them and you see, hey, did our attack happen? And the battle system is really kind of a simple rock, paper, scissors versus mechanic, or a Fire Emblem, axe, sword, spear. If you're interested, it's 25 bucks US, also has pretty decent shipping if you're in the US or in Canada, and that's Sunday at 11:24 a.m. Now next up we have Green Hell, which is a cooperative survival adventure for 1 to 4 players where you and your team goes into the jungle to save your other idiot adventurer who thought that they could navigate the jungle by themselves. Classic men not asking for directions. It's also based off of the video game of the same name, which if you backed it early on, you would get a copy of that video game, a Steam key, for free. But you can't now because all those pledges are gone. Whoever thought it was good to cover games at the end of their campaign? We missed it! Oh. Now you're going to move around the jungle during the day, exploring the land and gathering resources that you get to put into your backpack, polyomino style. And then you can also turn those polyomino resources and craft them into polyomino weapons and other useful items demonstrated by this magical moving picture here. Then after the day's done, you'll have to brave the night, and you'll drop these cubes into this creepy dice tower. And if they come out on one side, that will happen to you in the night, and if they come on the other side, well, then you're safe. Which is a mechanism that's used in Edge of Darkness or Dead Reckoning or Dead of Winter Flick 'em Up, and I really like that sort of throw it on the table and see what happens, let gravity decide mechanism. I just think it's a fun mechanic. Now it says it's scenario based, it's campaign, but it's not legacy, so nothing gets destroyed. I imagine it's very similar to Zombicide, in which there are scenarios and it's kind of a campaign if you go through them in order. There's a hint of a story, but it really won't make a difference. $91 Canadian for the base pledge, or you can add $31 more to get 4 miniatures, so don't do that. I guess this is around the same pricing model as Carnage, but this one has the video game to give it some life underneath. But that being said, this also does look like it has a little bit more depth than Carnage did. I just don't ever see why you would pay that much to get the deluxe upgrade, which is just the miniatures and your dice tower has a design on it. Anyway, if that looks cool to you, the rulebook's pretty readable, and the deadline is Sunday at 12 p.m., aka noon. It also is worth mentioning that if they hit 95k euros, they're about 20k away from that goal right now, they'll unlock another character, which I find is always great in these sorts of you play a character, asymmetrical character game. I find that the extra characters always seem to add value, at least to me. And next up we have the abstract game Motif. Not Motif, as the word is actually pronounced, but Motif. And I got a few more bones to pick with this game, which is a shame because it looks beautiful. I love the idea of the board. What an elegant design feature in terms of having a board whose spaces need to change color. It's really cool. Definitely gets a point for that one. Where it loses a point is how needlessly complicated the campaign page is. I'm happier that they're offering a cheaper way to play the game, but when it says in your pledge on the side and doesn't include this, you can add them for 10, 20, 20, 10. It just feels, why throw all that information at your backers constantly? There's an option in getting the board pre-assembled if you don't want to do it yourself. I don't know how complicated it will be to assemble, so I don't know if that's a good choice or not. There are more ways to add luxury elements to it, like luxury pieces or a luxury box. Plus, their intro video only highlights the use of these luxury cards, which are actually an add-on as well, and completely change the point of the game. The base game is just about controlling the most squares on the board. You can move your pieces around and block other people off, which sure seems fine. The luxury cards for an additional $10 gives you a pack of 52 cards that basically turn your game from Othello into freeze frame. Both of which are fun, neither of which are the pinnacle of strategy as this campaign wants to suggest to you. Plus, they make some other bold claims in their video, which I'm not a fan of. One being, Motif feels good to the touch. You're coming on a bit strong here, Motif. But more, too, unlike other board games, our board game makes a great display piece. Canvas would like a word with you, sir. 2, your box is just fine. 3, you're charging people $10 extra to get this luxury box that's just fine. Get out of here. I mean, the game does seem like an alright abstract. I would much prefer it with the luxury cards rather than not, because I think those creating patterns probably is a fun thing. But if you're in the market for an abstract, I would much rather opt for Euro. But the deadline is Sunday at 3 p.m. if you're interested. And finally this week we have a game called Spaceship Shuffle, which describes itself as 1 to 5 players cooperatively build, upgrade, and launch a real SpaceX Starship. You can't see your cards and time is running out. Now this one is made by 2 aerospace engineers, and the campaign page smacks of how excited they are that so many rockets are going up into space, which is really charming. Regardless of how you feel of the Branson, Musk, Bezos dick measuring contest, and then listening to interviews of them trying to convince themselves that it was a good idea to spend millions and millions of dollars on a 1-minute space flight where they're tucked into a cramped little seatbelt when they could have just gone on a roller coaster instead. Also, since they're aerospace engineers, I'll forgive the line. Hundreds of hours and playtesters from around the globe have refined this game into a playable format. Well, I'm certainly glad it's playable. I'm certainly glad it stopped making people physically ill to test it anymore. Even though that would be a pretty thematic twist. Oh no, I'm thinking about roller coasters again. They don't have a rule book. It's 38 bucks Canadian plus shipping. But shipping is pretty decent, and it should be because it's just a bunch of cards. So you have to decide for yourself if it's worth it. I also find the gameplay video quite charming, even though it's incredibly confusing at first because he's just throwing all this terminology that they've managed to cram into the different card decks. But if you're interested in space travel or building rockets, or you have someone in your life who is interested in that, this might not be a bad pick, because the gameplay is literally just a carbon copy of Hanabi, which I really enjoy, but it's also 10 bucks, Hanabi. And this is just the same game. Instead of building fireworks displays, you're building rockets. The only difference is that you can also move your rockets around on these launch pads, and when you complete a rocket, you get an extra little development card that gives you a special bonus. But it's just Hanabi. You can give a clue. You can discard a card to get a clue back. You can play a rocket part. Anyway, if you're interested, that finishes next Tuesday, the 21st at 12:45 p.m. And that's it. We're done this week. Another one in the bag. So every week I do a pick for me and a pick for you. This week's pick for me is a little tough. I'm torn between two, 10 out of 10 and Eero. I think 10 out of 10 does look surprisingly good. And I'm kind of swayed towards it because I really prejudged it based upon the marketing, and then I had that feeling of being pleasantly surprised and saying, oh no, this actually looks like something fairly enjoyable. I think it'll be a good party game. Where I'm swayed away from it is that I could just play Wavelength, and I think it would be just as great, if not better, of the same sort of experience. And I don't have that same sort of comparison of a similar game with Eero. I mean, I guess checkers and chess, but this seems like a completely different animal. So my official pick of the week is going to be Eero. It gets the nod. I know, it was so long ago at the beginning of the video. You don't remember. Or maybe it's the only one you watched before you skipped to the end. I guess you didn't miss much, did you? And I think even though it would be bananas and my brain would 50% literally explode if I tried to play this game, I like chess and I like that sort of system. And this is a nice twist on that and feels like it'll be easy for everybody to pick up, and you can invest as much or as little time into it getting good as you want. And I'm actually pretty sure that the designer is a subscriber of this channel, which actually had no bearing on the pick. It did have a slight bearing on whether or not I was going to cram it into last week's very long episode, or push it to this week in the hopes that I could talk about it more, because I think it looks good. And I was hopeful that it would be one of the top ones this week. And for me, it is. I mean, caveat as always, it is expensive for what you get in terms of the physical components. For good old cheapy me, you could probably make a print and play version of it cheaper. But I'm looking strictly at the game as a game itself, if I could print and play it, because I'm not going to take the time to do that. That would be way too much. Anyway, you'll have to decide for yourself if you want it. For me, that's the one where I am pretty interested in. I'm also very interested in the pick for you, but it's a pick for you because I feel like this one has the best chance at landing for a wider audience, and that is, maybe no surprise, Wild Serengeti. I don't think I'll ever pronounce it Wild Serengeti from here on out. It's raised significantly more money than every other campaign this week. I think it's sitting around 180K last time I checked. This is of course not counting the Hexagonal system, where even if one single person pledged for it, it would probably hit that 180K bar. But it seems clean, crisp, the animeeples are so charming, and it's a pretty great price point for a Kickstarter game. I think it's like 10, 20 bucks cheaper maybe than Shoalia was. I probably would opt to wait for the retail version, even though you get that $8 discount. Now you're still paying for the shipping, and I don't know if the promo pack necessarily means that much to me in my gaming experience. So you'll have to work out if you want it now or you want it later, what makes a difference for you, or if you don't want it at all, because that is the best option, perfectly legitimate. And I'm not here to try to make you spend money unless you are really excited about it. Because think about it, you also have 100 games on your shelf that will give you as equally great a time. Anyway, that's it. Thank you again so much for watching. Let me know in the comments, as always, what you're backing, what you're interested in, what I got wrong. I always love hearing from you. And if you wouldn't mind dropping a like in the comments on your way out, that really helps a lot, so they tell me, in terms of YouTube sharing this to more people, which helps the channel continue to grow. And also these videos in particular take a heck of a lot of time, and it's always nice knowing that people are getting some value out of them. I appreciate you all being here. Once again, my name's Chris George. I don't have a catchphrase, so you know what, but just don't forget that Motif feels good to the touch. Ugh, yuck. Bye.